months ago, I made a video in which I painted what I thought the playoffs would look like ahead of the 2025 NFL season. Now, that video was recorded prior to the season beginning. It was just my thoughts and predictions on who would be winning their divisions and who would be making it in the wildcard spots. And now that the 2025 season is officially over, we can take a look back at that video to see what I got right and what I got so terribly wrong. But on top of those predictions, we can actually take a look at every single preseason prediction that I made. I'm talking fantasy, I'm talking Prizepicks, I'm talking even my weekly Pickems that I did throughout the season. Let's see if I know my stuff at all, or if I'm just blabbering on for no real reason. So we're going to unpack the entire 2025 NFL season right here, right now. So feel free to sit back, relax, and join me as we go back to my preseason predictions. So we're going to do this division by division. First up, I'm going to put my prediction of the divisional power rankings, or just the division layout, how I thought the division would pan out up here on the right side. And on the left side, I'm going to put how the division actually panned out at the end of the NFL season, and we'll walk through each team's journey on how they got to this record and how they finished in this division the way that they did. So first up, we have the AFC North. And from the top to bottom, who I thought would finish first to last in the AFC North was the Baltimore Ravens in first, the Pittsburgh Steelers in second, the Cincinnati Bengals in third, and the Cleveland Browns in fourth. Now, in reality, how the AFC North panned out was the Steelers in first place with a 10-7 record, the Baltimore Ravens in second with an 8-9 record, the Cincinnati Bengals in third place with a 6-11 record, and finally in fourth place, the Cleveland Browns with a 5-12 record. Now, I was this close. I was one Tyler Loop field goal away from absolutely nailing the AFC North on the head. Record-wise, I can't personally say I thought that nearly entire AFC North would finish with the losing record. That was not in my prediction whatsoever. But it really did come down to the very last moment of that spectacular Sunday Night Football game in which Tyler Loop missed the field goal for the Ravens to miss the playoffs and the Steelers to make it. Now, let's take a look back at the individual journeys that these teams had this past season. Starting off with the Browns. Well, the Cleveland Browns had the exact kind of season that Myles Garrett nearly held out in the postseason for. At the end of last season, Myles Garrett was due a big contract, and he was doing a bit of a contract holdout, saying, I don't really care about individual accolades. All I care about in this point in my career is winning football games. And then they threw a boatload of money at him, made him the highest paid non-quarterback ever. And all of a sudden, Myles Garrett realized he doesn't care about winning football games all that much. And he actually had the exact kind of season he said he did not care about. The Cleveland Browns finished last with just 5 wins on the year. And Myles Garrett did the best possible thing he could do for his career, which was break the sack record, a feat that should not be undermined. That is a record that has stood for nearly 2 decades, maybe slightly over 2 decades. I don't know when exactly Strahan got it, but definitely a worthy accomplishment. Though I do think it rings with a lot of irony that Myles Garrett puts out that statement and then has this season. And the Browns are the Browns. I mean, we all thought they were going to finish in last, and they finished in last. It was a quarterback carousel. We saw Joe Flacco light it up. 40-year-old old Joe. I mean, he looked great for a little bit, and then they traded him away to their division rival in the Bengals. And then they started dealing Gabriel, and then they finally said, it's time for Shadur Sanders to take over. And Shadur had his flashes of greatness yes, he also had some bad performances, but overall, it was a very Brown season. Pretty solid defense at times. Overall, nothing really that good. Then we go to the Cincinnati Bengals, who had yet another disappointing season. I don't know if you can tell, this is my best Joe Burrow impression. I mean, Joe Burrow, every single post-game presser that he's been healthy for, cannot keep his hands out of his hair. He has beautiful hair, don't get me wrong, it's a nice look, but it is funny how every single question he adjusts his hair like 5 times before answering it, with either the most depressed answer or the most sarcastic answer that you're ever gonna hear. Or it's about Pokemon and he gives you a straightforward one. He's a funny guy. Not a good season from the Bengals from expectations standpoint. Last year we saw how this defense crumbled. You had Joe Burrow playing at an NFL All-Pro type level, throwing for 5,000 yards, a boatload of touchdowns. The offense was electric, and the defense sucked. Just flat out, they sucked. They didn't really do anything in the offseason. They even had their first round pick rolled out of the offseason because they weren't second round pick. First or second round pick. One of the two did not want to sign the contract that they were offering. It wasn't good. Then you have Joe Burrow getting hurt and the Bengals, inevitably falling apart because they have no defense and Joe Flacco can only do so much to save their offense. It didn't work out. They finished at 6-11. There was a little bit of time where they thought the AFC North was so weak at one point it looked like that the Bengals could actually climb back into it, sitting at a 4-11 record. No, that can't be right. Maybe it was 4-9. But they eventually fall out of the race. I think, at least the way that they ended the season, the rumors of Joe Burrow leaving and being disgruntled have kind of quieted down. It sounds like him and Zach Taylor and the regular group of guys on the offense are still all in it to win it. It's a bad analogy, really. They're going to lose it. But, yeah, you keep your franchise cornerstones and try and run it back with maybe a better defense next year. But I will say, at least they're fun to watch when Joe Burrow's on the field. They're fun to watch, but this is the 3rd straight year where they have underperformed. They haven't been to the playoffs, and something's got to give because eventually Joe Burrow or these wide receivers are going to want out. And then we get to the Ravens. Now the Ravens, they were so close to the playoffs, and it really doesn't matter because I think either way, whoever made the playoffs from the AFC North, we are going to predict to lose in that wildcard matchup anyways. But heartbreaking loss for them on Sunday night. Probably the best season closing game that I've ever watched. That 4th quarter, you've got 2 Zay Flowers walk-in touchdowns from Lamar Jackson on crazy 3rd down plays. You got the Steelers taking the lead at the very end of the game, and then Chris Boswell missing the kick to make it only a 2-point lead instead of a 3-point lead. The Ravens getting stymied, having to go for it on 4th down, and then converting with an amazing Isaiah Likely catch. For some reason, Lamar kneeling at 3 yards backwards. You could have just rushed it up the middle. You had a timeout, but instead they chose to add distance on the field goal. And then you got the rookie kicker, Tyler Loop, missing the game-winning kick that would have sent them to the postseason. And all of that culminates in you firing your head coach of the last 18 years, John Harbaugh. Now, do I think Harbaugh got fired on this last game alone? No. It definitely wasn't his fault. I don't think that his coaching performance was that bad in this final game. Ultimately, it came down to the players on the field. 2 games ago, when they played against the Patriots on Sunday Night Football, I will say that was coaching malpractice, and he was getting a lot of heat for that game. I could see him getting fired after that one, but with the way that they were able to win after giving Derrick Henry the ball 33 times, and I don't know, I was kind of surprised that it wasn't like mutually parting ways or more time passing before they came up with their decision. The fact that they were so quick to fire him did shock me. I don't know if that's Lamar who also wanted him out of the building or not, but I think ultimately this season you can just blame on Lamar's injuries. I mean, if Lamar doesn't get hurt, yeah, you're in the playoffs. I have no real doubts about it. You did start off horribly. It was not a good start to the season whatsoever. But even then, he gets hurt, and you still find a way to compete, and you're almost in the playoffs. So the season lives and dies with Lamar the same way that it is for the Bengals. Much is true for the Ravens as well. If your star quarterback is not healthy, you're not going to have that much success. And yeah, the defense did falter a bit more than it did last year, but you guys eventually figured it out. I think overall, I'm not as worried for the Ravens as I am for the Bengals because Cap isn't as bad. I think that the Ravens can do more to fix up their roster than the Bengals can. And yeah, I think that this can easily be their division to take over once again, just because Aaron Rodgers, I doubt he plays another season. I do think that he's going to stay true to his word and retire after this year, which means you don't really need to worry about the well, let me take that back. Let's talk about the Steelers. Steelers with a very up and down season. You start off hot, quickly take over the division, no problems. And then in the middle you dip, you nosedive very, very hard. You allow the Ravens, who are completely out of it, to fully catch up and overtake you. And then at the very last second you hold your ground and steal it back from the Ravens. And we didn't know until that last field goal. We didn't know if Aaron Rodgers' last game was going to be in the postseason or in the regular season. Personally, I am kind of glad that he gets to play another game, that we get to see one more postseason matchup, if we're being honest. I don't think he has a run in him. I think that the Steelers are, done so. But I'm glad we get to at least see him go back to the playoffs one last time after that horrendous Jets tenure. And yeah, I have to imagine that this is a win for the Steelers. You go all in, you get Jonnu Smith, you get Jalen Ramsey. Ramsey makes the Pro Bowl. You get Aaron Rodgers. He's better than what you had last year in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. You win the division. And yeah, I think it'll be the same outcome as every year. You go to the first round and you get whipped. But at least you can do it with a smile on your face. And yeah, that's the division, basically. Hats off to Mike Tomlin for keeping his win streak record. Got to those 9 wins and immediately shit hit the fan as always. And it was cool. It was cool seeing the AFC North pan out the way that it did. Usually, I think of them as a very strong division. And this year they were very weak. So I appreciated the realness. I appreciated that they, changed it up a little bit. Next up, let's talk about the AFC East. AFC East being my home team's, division. So, in my preseason predictions, I had in 4th place the New York Jets, 3rd place the Miami Dolphins, 2nd place the New England Patriots, and in 1st place the Buffalo Bills. Pretty standard, pretty straightforward. What most people probably predicted going into the season. Maybe some people had the Dolphins ahead of the Patriots. All depended on how much you believed in the new changes the Patriots implemented and how much you disliked Tua. I disliked him enough and I had enough faith in my team that I put them in 2nd above the Dolphins. I thought, we're not that trash. But what I didn't expect is that we would actually be one of the best teams in the NFL. I can't say I predicted that to any degree, because what we ended up getting out of the AFC East was 1st place New England Patriots, 2nd place Buffalo Bills, 3rd place Miami Dolphins, and 4th place New York Jets. The Bills have owned this division for the last 5 or 6 years, and I thought that they were going to continue to own for a little bit longer. I expected this to be a rebuild said about it, I'm thrilled. It's been a blast. It's been a heck of a season. Starting off with the Jets, I think the Jets have had one of the worst seasons that you can imagine. Yes, I did predict that the Jets would be last in this division, but in many ways, I think that their season has been way worse than I projected. Justin Fields being benched by week 9, week 10. I honestly am surprised. I thought he would make it through the season. I didn't think he would be this bad. He had 2 games where he threw for like 45 yards, and that was, I think, with him being healthy. Like, there was definitely that one game in London where he just finished with 45 yards passing, which is kind of unheard of. I feel like under 100 yards is the new 100 to 200. In the past, I would see someone finish with 100 to 200 yards and be like, damn, this guy sucks. And then this year, there were guys legitimately finishing a full NFL game with 50 yards or less. It's like, bro, just complete 3 passes. Like, surely one of your dumb offs is gonna take it and run for 20 yards. This is insane. But, yeah, that's how the Jets chose to operate. Aaron Glenn, I don't know how he survived Black Monday. All these coaches getting fired. You got what? Pete Carroll, Raheem Morris. Mid-season you had Bryce Callahan, and you had Brian Daboll. You just had John Harbaugh, Jonathan Gannon. All of these coaches. And yet Aaron Glenn's job remains. I can't say I agree with that decision. I look, at a technical level, I would not say I'm the most advanced. I can't analyze the field in a technical capacity and necessarily tell you what every coach is good and bad at. But with the knowledge that I have in Aaron Glenn, I see a bad coach. I see a coach that does not know how to manage the clock. I see a coach that has a horrible team. They finished the year with no interceptions. Garrett Wilson was their number 1 receiver, and he didn't play after week 6. And I think ultimately, benching Justin Fields was the worst decision that was made out of them. Because if you look at Justin Fields and the way that he was playing, what got worse when he went down? Nothing. Their offense was as horrible as ever. In fact, they started losing like 40 to 10 instead of 25 to 10. I looked at Justin Fields and Brady Cook's final numbers. Justin Fields was averaging about 130 passing yards a game, which is bad. But across 9 games, he had 7 touchdowns, 7 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. And yeah, he had a couple concussions, and I think he had a couple rushing touchdowns. So there was more. There was actually more than shown on just the passing stat sheet. Brady Cook, in 5 starts, was averaging 130 yards passing. He finished with 2 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. I mean, the guy is not ready for the NFL, and they played him for 5 straight games. The Jets are gonna Jets. And then you have the Dolphins. Now the Dolphins, they started off really, really bad, to the point where you thought that Tua and Mike McDaniel were done for sure. And by the time that they ended the year, you realized that Tua was done, but Mike McDaniel, yeah, maybe one more year, it'll be okay. I don't know. I don't really know what to say about this team. Why did Tua fall off a cliff so hard at the beginning of this year? I couldn't tell you. They still pulled off some upset victories, though. You saw them beat the Bills, which I don't think anyone was expecting. They had a couple nice matchups here and there. Can Tua win a Super Bowl? No. Can Tua take you to the postseason? At this point in his career, I don't know that he can. So I would leave it to people who are more talented at their job. a better facility, a better organization. Maybe someone can fix Tua, but it's not the Dolphins. I think this marriage is definitely one that needs to end. And for Mike McDaniel, I think he's fun, Reports were that he lost the locker room. It's highly possible. I'm not there. I can't say that for certain, but I enjoy his energy. I'm ready to see him do it for one more year. And if he can't do it, then throw him away. Someone will take him back as an offensive coordinator because the guy is talented. A lot of pre-snap motions, but maybe head coaching is not in the cards for him anymore. Then, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills. I mean, you look at their season, they had a good season, 12-5. Not bad by any accounts. But I feel like this is more similar to the Buffalo Bills that we saw 2 years ago than it was last year. Last year, Josh Allen came out and was just so electric that it didn't matter how bad their defense was. They were winning games, and that was ultimately why he won the MVP. They gutted the roster, and they got better. This year, I felt like was more in line with what I was expecting to see last year. Josh Allen is still playing at a high level, but the Bills just aren't quite as dominant as they always have been. They have some sloppy losses. They don't finish at the top of the division. And yeah, they ultimately end up falling to a wild card team. Now, did I see this in the stars for the Bills? No. After last year, I think there were two things that I kind of gave too much credit after last year. It was that the Bills roster does not matter and that Justin Jefferson is quarterback proof. These were two things that after last year's season I was like, yeah, I don't need to doubt these. These are like surefire absolute truths of the NFL. And yeah, they're not. So we see the Bills fall to 12-5 and they split games with the Patriots, and the Patriots end up winning. It was, yes, I understand the schedule. the schedule I have seen the memes, I have seen the noise, and I think there's some validity to it when you go from like a fourth place schedule to winning a division. The path isn't that difficult because you're playing some of the worst rosters in the league, but at the end of the day, you can only play who is on your schedule. And you either win those games or you lose those games. Now, I don't think that this is a fraudulent team per se. I just think that they won the games that they were given. Had they been given more games, if there was a bigger sample size, yeah, we'd have a better test of if they're good or not good. But since week, 3, this team has looked very, very good. I mean, the Steelers game was awful for them, all the turnovers. But since then, they've kind of snapped it into a new gear, and they just look great. And you could credit it to a bunch of different things. You could say it's Drake May's year to leap, Mike Vrabel taking over as the coach. You could say Josh McDaniels stepping back in as the play caller. The fact that they spent pretty much all of their day one free agency focusing on defensive presences, or them bringing in Stephon Diggs as their new wide receiver one. These are all factors, but these were all huge question marks to the point where I thought it would be good enough for them to rise from 4 to 2. But the fact that they were able to jump from 4 and 13 to 14 and 3 in the span of 1 year is pretty amazing. And it'll be a season to remember regardless of how it ends. I am pretty delighted with how this season has gone, so I was glad to witness it. It was very, very nice, and just know I don't think this is not something that will maybe follow next year. I don't know if you guys have seen, but the schedules you know what rotating divisions you're playing in the next year, and you know what teams you're going to play based on your finishing. And so the Patriots having finished in first place, and I think we play next year the AFC West and the NFC North, which is going to be a hard schedule. So, yeah, we will see what reality is next year. It might not be this grand and beautiful, but that's okay. Let's bask in the glory while we have it, and go Pats. Alright, after that, let's focus on the AFC West. In the AFC West, we had, in fourth place, in my predictions at least, the Las Vegas Raiders, then the LA Chargers, then the Kansas City Chiefs, and in first place, the Denver Broncos. That is correct. In my predictions before the season started, I did have the Denver Broncos dethroning the Kansas City Chiefs. Now in reality, what ended up happening was, yes, the Raiders were in last place, but then we saw the Chiefs falling all the way down to third place, the Chargers taking second place, and the Broncos finishing in first place. So, I got the Broncos right, but I did not think that the Chiefs would fall off as hard as they did. I don't know what really happened with the Raiders. The Raiders, I personally thought they had made moves that would make them better than they were last year. I thought the coaching change was a good idea. Thought bringing in Geno was a good idea. Thought Ashton Genty was a nice pick. I didn't know necessarily it was a good idea, but it was a fun pick. And the Raiders, it all blew up in their face. They have the number 1 pick in the draft. They are the worst team in the NFL. So be it. It is what it is. I mean, I thought that they would be like a 7-win team. They ended up being a 3-win team. That's the luck of the draw. What can I say? And then you've got the Chiefs. Now the Chiefs, when you look at their roster, I think it is better than it was last year. Obviously, you have Rashee Rice serving the 7-game suspension, but I really didn't expect the Chiefs to be this bad, and I'm still kind of appalled at it, but it's just the clutch time performances. Yes, Mahomes looked a little bit worse at the beginning of the season, but it just became that they couldn't win games the way that they usually do. Like, Mahomes, on paper, actually had a very good season through a big chunk of it, but it felt like he was, like, having to carry the offense completely. Travis Kelce definitely washed at this point, so you have that. You also have the receiving core not being the most consistent, but Rashee Rice, once he was back, he was amazing. So it's over for now. I don't think that we can truly count the Chiefs out, because you still have Reed, you still have Mahomes. Obviously, this ride was going to have to end at some point, and yes, you lose the division this year, and Mahomes has torn ACL, so I don't think that you take it next year. But 2 years from now, do I think that Mahomes can't retake this division? I think it's entirely possible. I would not rule anything out. I feel like we could still see the Chiefs come back and then be at the top of this division for another 3 years. So anything's possible. Though I don't necessarily want to see it. I like seeing a new group of guys take over. Considering my team has one of those guys. I don't think Patrick Mahomes' NFL future is all in the past. I think that doesn't make any sense. I think he still has some important games left to play out of them. Anyway, then we have the Chargers. Now the Chargers, if I'm being quite honest, I don't know how to say this without being disrespectful. The simple reason why I didn't think the Chargers would be as good this year as they were last year is because I didn't think they had the aura. Like, I wish I could put it in a more intellectual way, but they got into the playoffs last year and they went out sorry. I didn't think they really did anything to the roster that moved me. And so while I thought Jim Harbaugh was a good coach and I think that Justin Herbert is a good quarterback, I was just not feeling the team. I thought that they would finish 8th, and they end up finishing... No, I thought that they would finish 9th in the... Yeah, because I had the Jaguars missing the playoffs just barely. Then I thought the Chargers and Patriots would finish somewhere around there. So yeah, I mean, they exceeded my expectations. Justin Herbert balled out this year. Quentin Johnston in the early season looked like a different man. And yeah, their defense is always pretty solid, so they had a good year. I'm not rooting for them anymore. I hope that they crash and burn come Sunday, but all in all, I think it's a season they can be proud of. The fact that they went to the playoffs 2 years in a row, something to build on. But at this point in Herbert's career, I feel like he does need to win a playoff game. Now, I don't want it to be against my own team, but the Justin Herbert discourse, I feel like, is going to grow more and more uncomfortable with every year that he is one and done in the playoffs. And it's just tough. I mean, I don't know if this is his year. If it is, I'll be really upset about it, but I don't know if this is his year. And finally, we get to the Denver Broncos, who finished number 1 in this AFC West. The best team in the entire AFC, finishing at a 14-3 record. They were unbelievable at home, only loss being to the Jaguars in a surprise upset loss. They have home field advantage all through the playoffs. Truly speaking, there's nothing you can do to prepare for the conditions at Mile High except go there early and acclimate to the altitude. It is a huge advantage that they have, that they are gonna have. It's just, yeah, good on them for winning the first seed. The fact that they're able to win the 1 seed, guarantee home field advantage all the way up to the Super Bowl if they make it that far. You just gotta be impressed. I mean, they did a great job in the offseason. I think the thing that spoke to me the most about this team was their defense. It definitely, I really wanted the Broncos to be one of the teams that I picked to fall out of the playoffs. I figured someone would from last year, and I didn't think the Broncos would necessarily make it again. But as soon as I saw their defensive free agency, I was like, I can't. I literally cannot justify not picking them to be in the playoffs, much less not win this division. So, yeah, for them to win 14 games, I didn't expect that, but they definitely did a good job in free agency, and the team looks good. Like, whether, yeah, they're not the most flashy team, the offense isn't the prettiest or one you'd want to ride home about, but the defense is scary, the coaching is good, the offense gets the job done. I think that this is a dangerous team come playoff times. Alright, and we finally make it to our 4th AFC division. This is going to be the AFC South. In the AFC South, I had predicted in 4th place the Indianapolis Colts, and then in 3rd place the Tennessee Titans, in 2nd place the Jacksonville Jaguars, and in 1st place the Houston Texans. In reality, what we ended up seeing was in 4th place with a 3-14 record, the Tennessee Titans. In 3rd place with an 8-9 record, the Indianapolis Colts. In 2nd place with a 12-5 record, the Houston Texans. And in 1st place with a 13-4 record, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know I don't speak for everyone when I say this, but to me, the most surprising thing about this division this year was not the fact that the Jaguars won the division, but more so the fact that the Colts did not finish in last place. season, we had a Daniel Jones versus Anthony Richardson quarterback competition. And I had no faith in either of them. Truth be told, I did not care for this offense one bit. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is Jonathan Taylor. Quentin Nelson is Quentin Nelson. Outside of that, I did not have any faith in this offense. So for Daniel Jones to go out there, make this one of the historically best offenses that football has ever seen through like the first 8 weeks, and then eventually get hurt, go on IR, and then the Colts miss the playoffs. I don't know that I've truly seen a season like that. It is one of the most unpredictable journeys I have witnessed in football. You make that Sauce Gardner trade, you can tell that the Colts are going all in, they're cashing in on their unexpected success. And then they go 1-7. I mean, unreal, and they lost 2 first-round picks. So you got all of this success, traded 2 first-round picks away, and then you don't even finish with a winning record. And also, Philip Rivers came out of retirement. Yeah, it just, what a year for the Colts. So yeah, I had expectations were in the mud for the Colts. I honestly thought they'd be competing for the number 1 pick in the draft. And at this point, I mean, hopefully Daniel Jones is able to recover his fibula and things are okay and they can kind of run it back the way they did last year. But man, the fact that they got to 8 wins, color me surprised. I did not expect it. The Titans being this bad. Surprising. No, maybe not. I thought that they would be a 5-win team. They ended up being a 3-win team. I'm not too upset at it. I really thought it would just be like the Colts are a 3-win team and the Titans are a 5-win team. So the Titans finishing with 3 wins is within the reasonable range that I thought they would be. I thought that Calvin Ridley would have more of an impact, and I thought that Bryce Callahan would last a little bit longer. But yeah, anytime you fire a coach mid-season, you know that season is done. It's cooked. You're maybe gonna get 1 more win out of that season. So we'll see if they hire the right guy and get an O-line and get a defense and, you know, maybe change the branding a little bit. They could be a team that I care about, but at this point in time, I don't really care about the Titans. Anywho, that brings us to our top 2 dogs, the 13-4 Jaguars and the 12-5 Texans. And the Texans started off so miserably bad, and then C.J. Stroud was out, and they managed to go on that 3-0 run with Davis Mills, and I think that really saved their season. I don't know what it was about Stroud getting hurt and Davis Mills taking over, but that was the turning point where they went from losing games they were supposed to win to just winning games, winning every game. Their defense is legit, even though the Broncos, I don't know if it makes sense. The Broncos might overall have the best defense. I think the Texans have the scariest defense. It's not one that I would want to play against. It looks ferocious. It does look menacing. And yeah, I do feel bad for this upcoming playoff matchup. I think it's gonna be brutal, but I think the Texans, they've got a mean defense, and offensively, I can't say I'm too impressed. I think that C.J. Stroud, he's not quite living up to the first year hype, but he's definitely better than last year in this late stretch. So I think the hype is kind of stabilized. He's playing at a level that is sustainable, where we're not too upset he's making the throws he needs to make. They're winning games, but it's not superstar or spectacular, and that's okay. It doesn't need to be that way, as long as you can not make too many mistakes that your defense can't overcome. That's really all you need. Sometimes you just need a game manager. Jags. The Jags. It's hard to put into words what the Jags have done this year. I think the Jags, when they started the year, it was all about the defense. It was just like, wow, look at how good the Jaguars look, despite their offense being whack. And then they started losing, and it was like, oh, this is the Jaguars. We should have expected this. The Colts are falling, the Jags are falling, the Texans are rising. Looks like the Texans are gonna take the division again. And then the Jags figured out their offense and like barely lost another game. They had a little bit of a hangover after beating the Chiefs, but once it got to like week 12, week 11, they just never looked back. Like, Liam Cohen got into Trevor Lawrence's brain and unlocked him. He has been playing absolutely great ball for the last 1.5 months. So shout out Trevor Lawrence, shout out the Jags. They got it done. Lawrence's career looks saved, and interested to see what they'll do in the playoffs, because I still don't know. Like, yes, they have been playing undeniably great football, but they've got a crazy opponent in the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills have playoff experience, and they're the team that everyone was expecting in the postseason, versus some people maybe were expecting the Jags, but I can't say everyone was. So we'll have to see how they defend home court in round 1. So with that, let's move on to our NFC divisions. And first up, we're going to have the NFC North. And in 4th place, I had the Minnesota Vikings. In 3rd place, I had the Chicago Bears. In 2nd place, I had the Green Bay Packers. And in 1st place, I had the Detroit Lions. This is probably my worst out of all of the different divisions that I did. This is, I think, the worst one. 4th place, in reality, force of habit, Detroit Lions. 3rd place, Minnesota Vikings. 2nd place, Green Bay Packers. And 1st place, Chicago Bears. Now, this division was not just hard to predict. Like, it wasn't that the seasons went drastically different than I was expecting. I just didn't expect them all to win so much. The entire division finished above 500. This is the anti-NFC South. And it's impressive. You know, having 3 teams all finish with 9 wins, it's very hard to pick out who's going to be better than who. The Bears taking the division, I didn't expect that. I thought that they were going to be an 8-win team. And yeah, that's about what I thought their maximum potential was. I didn't expect 3 extra wins. As for the Lions, I thought the Lions would be like a 12-win team, so there are 3 teams below what I thought. The Packers. Yeah, I'd have to say I thought that the Packers were like... I don't recall if I made this before or after the Micah Parsons trade. I think I made it after. So I knew about Micah, and I think I was still a little bit lower on the Packers, where I thought, like, yeah, they'll probably still finish in 11 or 10. And I think the Packers is probably the closest to accurate that I got in this division. They're the only ones who actually finished right around where I thought. Let's say they had beat the Cowboys, I think they would have done exactly how I thought the Packers were going to do. And then finally have the Vikings. I think every year I kind of discount the Vikings, and they kind of exceed expectations. But, like, it's really just a testament to their coaching staff. Yeah. You look at the Vikings this year, and they're pathetic. Offensively, they're just so pathetic. Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, neither running backs did well. Justin Jefferson, we all thought he was quarterback proof. Turns out he's not quarterback proof. JJ McCarthy either sucks or is injured all the time. He had a couple flashes, but it looks like a lot of bad. Carson Wentz can't really play ball anymore, and Max Brosmer does not belong in the NFL. And despite all of those things being true, the Minnesota Vikings finished with a 9-8 record and did not finish in last place. It's actually truly very sad. If they had a half-decent quarterback, they could have won this division. Because they were 2 away from winning it. They swept the Bears. Did they sweep the Bears, or did they only win once? They might have swept the Lions. Yeah, they swept the Lions. Either way, in those divisional games, Minnesota outperformed expectations from me quite a bit. And yeah, Kevin O'Connell, that coaching staff, that defense, it's far too good to lose that many games. But the offense just is definitely the missing piece there. The Lions losing both offensive coordinators, yeah, it was bad. I felt like they recovered from it. And then, I don't really know what exactly happened. I feel like mid-season I gained confidence in them being a top team again. And any important game that I thought they should win, like, there was a game against the Lions, there was a game against the Packers, and there's a game against the Rams. They just couldn't pull through in any of those games. At those games, had they been able to, like, do something in the third quarter of those games, maybe we're staring at a better team, but they couldn't beat the good teams this year, and that was really the difference. I think Dan Campbell's play calling has lost its charm. It's too aggressive. They should settle for points a little bit more than they do. The Packers, I don't know. I don't really have much to say about the Packers. I feel like if Micah didn't go down, they would have been a bit better. But even then, it did not match the level of play in the first 2-3 weeks. The first 2 weeks, Packers looked like they were going to win the Super Bowl. And then they came back down to reality. And then, yeah, once Micah went down, it's like, oh, okay, this is just the same old Packers that we see every single year. First round exit, if they make it out of the first round, second round exit. But for a little bit there was hope. And the Bears finishing in first. I am just going to say positive things. I really don't want to trash on the Bears at all. I think it's one of those teams where, I think you guys deserve it. I think that with all the quarterback struggles and how hard the franchise has been hit in, the last 2 decades, yes, you had that one Mitch Trubisky season where you made the playoffs, and then you had the double doink, and yeah, you had Jay Cutler for a little bit. But I think about Bears quarterbacks, and it makes me a little bit depressed. So the fact that Caleb went out there and balled out, won all those clutch games, and looks like the guy won the division. I'm happy for you guys. I don't want to say anything negative about this team. I have negative things to say, but I'll save that for my playoff predictions video. Anywho, after that, let us move into the NFC East. And in the NFC East, my predictions were 4th place New York Giants, 3rd place Dallas Cowboys, 2nd place Philly, and 1st place Washington Commanders. I've got to say, out of all the predictions that I made, this is probably the most egregiously bad one. Not in terms of top-down arrangement, but just my expectations of where the Commanders would finish versus reality was so disconnected. And it really was. I could see it. I could see the hype. There were so many parallels between CJ Stroud year 1 and CJ Stroud year 2. Not in terms of play, but just the way that we talked about the Texans. I felt myself doing the exact same thing with the Commanders, where it's like, oh yeah, this team is good. They already outperformed expectations with their rookie quarterback, got the quick turnaround, they could go the distance. They could really be one of the teams to beat in this division, or in this conference. And then they crashed and burned. Like, obviously the Texans, they still ended up winning, but it was a very disappointing season. Commanders, the wheels fell out, man. Like, bad season. Riddled with injuries and disappointment. Just, yeah, horrible 5-12 record. Not what I thought this team was gonna be doing at all. Terry McLaurin missed like almost the entire year, in my opinion. Yeah, I feel bad for them. The Giants, I don't feel bad for them. I think Dayball being gone mid-season, I thought it was a bit premature. But overall, somehow it still feels like a win. It feels like a win, and somehow it feels like a loss. I don't know. Very New York season, where you manage to find your franchise quarterback, feel good about him, and lose a ton of games to the point where you feel pathetic about the record, but you also don't have the top pick in the draft. Didn't they do this last year too? Didn't they do this exact same thing last year? Like, Drew Lock came in, won a couple games at the very end that they weren't supposed to win, and then they fall in the draft. Like, I've seen this movie before. But, you know, the Giants gonna Giant, the Jets gonna Jets, and the Giants gonna Giant. Football in New York has a very routine rhythm to it. And then you got the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys were slightly worse than I expected. I remember thinking, like, the Cowboys, though I had them third in this division, they actually finished second. I thought that the Cowboys could be a 8-9 win team. And yeah, they end up finishing 7-9-1, and you can treat that as 8-9. But I don't know, in my mind I thought they'd be closer to last year's Bengals than they were. Where like the offense is like so super mega charged. But they finished 9-8 because the defense is horrible. And yeah, the defense was horrible. But the offense, I don't even know. I mean, you look at it, and CeeDee Lamb, he was a bit hurt, and George Pickens had a career year. Dak had a great year. The running game was better than I was expecting, and yet somehow I'm disappointed, so I don't know. I guess that's just the Cowboys, but yeah, I had higher expectations for them. And then we have the Eagles, and I don't hate the Eagles by any means. I was rooting for them to win it last year in the Super Bowl. I think that Jalen Hurts is a likable quarterback. But it is going to take me a very long time to forgive the Eagles for breaking one of my favorite traditions in football, which is the fact that we don't have repeat NFC East winners. It had gone on for like 23 years straight where no NFC East winner had repeated as champion in the following year, and that the fact that the Eagles are now repeat champions, this is a streak that had been running for my entire life since I've been watching football. If there's one thing I can count on, it's the fact that no one is good in the NFC East for 2 years in a row at that premium division winning level. I think that's why, even though I put the Cowboys in third, even though, yeah, I just thought that like there was a slight chance that if the Commanders couldn't do it, the Cowboys would somehow pop out and smack the Eagles in the face and take their chain, but no. The Eagles' chain rests pretty on their neck. They're the defending Super Bowl champs. They won the division. And yeah, I think they're a good team. I mean, I have my concerns about them as well. But truth be told, I think I've dogged on them more than I needed to this year. I think I'm being extra critical of them because they are the defending champs, and because I can just easily compare them to how I saw them last year, and they're obviously worse than they were last year. But overall, they're a good football team, so let me put it to rest. Then, oh, yeah, no, I was too early. I was too early on my last call. This is actually my worst prediction of the year. First up, third up, we have the NFC West. In the NFC West, I had fourth place, Seattle Seahawks. Third place, Arizona Cardinals. Second place, LA Rams. First place, San Francisco 49ers. And as we all know, it went 3-14 Cardinals, 2-15 49ers, 12-5 Rams, and 14-3 Seahawks. The top three teams in this division do so much heavy lifting. Like, any one of these three teams could have finished as the number one overall. It is very, very entirely possible. It came down to, what was it? A third two-point conversion in a row in overtime to win it for the Rams. For the 49ers, yeah, they weren't quite as close in their matchup, but if CMC doesn't bobble that catch and lead into an interception, 49ers very easily could have won that game too, in my opinion. So this really was anyone's division of those three very good teams all fighting for one division lead. And then you have the Cardinals, who were honestly, I think, just tanking. They were tanking in pretty fashion with Kyler Murray out and Jacoby Brissett in. And yeah, this is probably my actual worst prediction. The Commanders, while it was bad, I think everyone else thought the same. The Seahawks, I can own more responsibility. I'm a Sam Darnold hater, I guess. Like, I don't hate him, but I do hate on him quite a bit. I don't really have faith in him. Even throughout the season, I still don't think he's good. But I don't trust him. I don't know. I watched him play too much football in New York for me to really think that he's a good quarterback. And while he's doing all these great things, I don't see it translating to the postseason. I feel like he's gonna have an LA Rams type game where he throws 3 picks. It's gonna be like Justin Herbert last year. I don't know what round in particular, but if the Seahawks actually won the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold, I would be so surprised. Like, I have severe doubts for him. The team as a whole, though, shout out to Mike McDonald, to Nick Emanmore, Devon Witherspoon, Grace Abel. I think everyone that they drafted, everyone that they brought in, the whole front office deserves a raise. The way that they reconstructed from last year. Hindsight's 2020. They did a fantastic job trading whatever moves that they made. They all hit. Like, them getting to the first seed is very impressive. Because I thought it was a very lateral move, and they would go from whatever they were at to slightly worse. I thought this was like a 7-9 team. No. Yeah. I guess 7-10. I thought they were a 7-10 team. I thought that the Cardinals would be slightly above them at 8-9. And yeah, they won twice as many games as I was expecting. Number 1 seed in the NFC. Truly good work. And yeah, the defense is incredible. Knocked it out of the park in the draft on both sides of the ball. So I have to give credit where credit is due. It's not a knock on the Seahawks at all. It's just a knock on Sam Darnold. I don't know. I can only be a little bit supportive of the guy. I don't know what's wrong with me. Cardinals, Kyler Murray is gone. Jonathan Gannon is gone. Cliff Kingsbury is gone. Cliff Kingsbury was gone a long time ago. He just left the Commanders. I don't know what awaits the Cardinals in their future, but I'm not too excited for it. The 49ers were this far from greatness. They were like one less injury away from winning the entire NFC. And it's amazing. I have a lot more thoughts on it that I will share in a little bit. I'm not quite ready yet, but the the 49ers, even though they couldn't pull it out in that last game. I am very proud of them. I think that they had a great season. And the Rams had also a great season, 12-5, 5 seed. Though they didn't end up winning the division, Matthew Stafford, a year to remember. Puka Nacua, very easily good challenge. JSN for offensive player of the year. Just electric. Overall, both sides of the ball, the Rams, they look very good. Yeah, I wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs. They, in my opinion, I like the Rams a little more than the Seahawks. But that's just me. Anywho, and that brings us to our 8th and final NFC division. And this is going to be the NFC South. And in the NFC South, I had the New Orleans Saints, the Carolina Panthers, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now what ended up happening was we had the Saints, the Falcons, the Bucs, and the Panthers. But those top 3 teams, they all finished with the same record of 8-9. So, do I feel bad about getting the tiebreakers wrong? No, not really. Kind of like I said, this is the anti-NFC North, where everyone is a loser, and 3 teams finish with practically the same record. I would say, if there's one team that I misjudged, the 2 teams that I really misjudged in this division would have to be the Saints and the Buccaneers. Panthers and Falcons, they did about as well as I thought they would do. I thought of the Panthers as a 6, 7, 8 win team. I looked at the Falcons, I thought 8 or 9 wins. The Buccaneers, though, I genuinely thought they could win 11 games. In 3 of those losses towards the end, I don't know how you explain it. I think realistically they should have finished with that, but they just had some really inexplicably bad games towards the end there. And because of how they performed, they did deserve to miss the playoffs and lose. So, yeah. Because it'll force them to rebuild a little bit. The Saints, Tyler Shook, I was harsher on him than I needed to be. I don't think he's the answer at quarterback, necessarily. But this is one of those things where I'd be interested to see how give him more of a leash. They gave him more leeway than I would have. I don't think I was ready to see Shug that early, in either the draft or how much he was starting. I would have started Spencer Rattler a little more. But Kellen Moore knows what he's doing. I think that his vision of this team is better than mine. He has a better understanding of the roster. So the Saints, I will say in December and late November, they surprised me as a team, and I'm actually quite interested to see how they shake up this NFC South next year. The Falcons are a disappointment. I think every year, regardless of who is playing, they are a huge disappointment. Last year, all you needed was Kirk Cousins to come out and play well, and he couldn't do that, and so you failed. So you go with Michael Penix, and there's some hope. Michael Penix comes out, doesn't play that well, gets hurt. So you're failing, and then Kirk Cousins comes in, and now he's playing decent football. And you're in the exact same place where it's like, you're bad. You're not bad enough to get a good draft pick, but you're not good enough to make the playoffs. You're mid to bad. And now you fired Raheem Morris. I don't think I watched enough Falcon games to know if he deserved being fired or not. I was a little bit surprised. And then the Panthers. I am not going to congratulate the Panthers for winning this division. Not going to do it. Because you didn't win enough games. You finished with an 8-9 record. NFC South, you made it to the playoffs, but you do not deserve props. Bryce Young, you will see another year, and I did think you were good enough to see another year, so I'm not mad about that. But this is not something that you should pride yourselves on. You had some good upsets, but you also had a terrible point differential. You're like horribly negative. Got a lot of PTA this year. I don't think that the Panthers are a good team, so I'm not going to praise them. You guys are all losers. But the Saints, shout out the Saints. And yeah, that about does it for my preseason predictions. How I thought that the divisions were going to pan out versus how they actually panned out in the 2025 NFL season. Yeah. So let's move on. Let's move into our next topic of conversation. And what would be a 2025 NFL season recap without some MVP discourse? And in my books, there are three main candidates. I know almost anyone that you ask is going to say it's a two-horse race. You either have Matthew Stafford, the 40-year-old gunslinger, career-high 46 touchdowns, leading, I think, the best offense in the NFL. Or you have the young gun, Drake May, who is doing the most with the least. Turned the Patriots around from 4-13 to 14-3 in 1 year. Number 2 seed in the AFC. Best completion percentage in the league. Playing at a very high level. Best deep ball passer in the league. And everyone's pretty much split between these two guys. I definitely have my thoughts. I have my prediction. I have my thoughts. I have my own personal reservations. But the third candidate and the person that I really wanted to win the MVP, who I know for sure is not going to get it and probably won't get that many votes, would have to be Christian McCaffrey. Because, here, let me lay it out for you. My deepest, the one thing I was really rooting for in Week 18 was for the 49ers to beat the Seahawks. And it's not because of anything to do with the Seahawks, but for the pure fact of how much it would have allowed me to battle Christian McCaffrey for MVP propaganda. Because look at this team. This is a team that finished 4th place in the NFC West a year after making the Super Bowl. 49ers went to the Super Bowl, lost that game, and then lost Christian McCaffrey on offense, and had no identity. They completely forgot how to play football. Yes, they were injured all throughout. Same story is true every single year, but the number one most important person on the team that they lost was Christian McCaffrey. And they were dead last in their division. This year, what was the story of the 49ers? They were just as hurt as every year prior, if not more hurt. You had Brock Purdy missing games. You had George Kittle missing games. You had Trent Williams missing games. You had Ricky Pearsall missing games. Brandon Ayuk did not play a single snap this year. They got rid of Deebo Samuel. Nick Bosa out for the year. Fred Warner out for the year. All of these guys. And you gutted the defense. The defense in the offseason was gutted. They lost so many players. And you're telling me, just with the fact that Christian McCaffrey was healthy, available, and played in every single game for the 49ers, that they not only climbed all the way back up, but almost won the entire NFC. They almost made the playoffs as the 1 seed in the NFC despite all the energy, despite all the injuries. That is unreal. And that is one man. Obviously, yes, he doesn't play defense, and there is a lot of coaching involved. But the fact of the matter stands, Christian McCaffrey, he is the most valuable person to that 49er team. 2 years years ago, I was all for him winning Offensive Player of the Year, but I didn't think that Brock Purdy deserved MVP because look at the surrounding cast. Then we look at Brock Purdy last year, and we realized, like, yeah, the magic, it's not there anymore. Brandon Ayuk goes down. His weapons are kind of out. He doesn't look nearly as good. But look at the team from last year. Look at the team this year. They went to that Super Bowl. If they can get themselves back in the position to go to the Super Bowl again, I think the only person that you can say is deserving of the MVP in that case is Christian McCaffrey, because he is the most valuable player for that team. Like, they beat the Los Angeles Rams with Mac Jones in at quarterback. Do you know how impressive that is? That is crazy. And it's just like, even from a stats perspective, Christian McCaffrey, he was 8th in the NFL in rushing yards. Yeah, it wasn't first, it wasn't second, it wasn't as good of a season as he's had. But he was definitive top 10 as a wide receiver, as a pass catcher. He finished with 924 yards, which was nearly 300 more yards than the next 49ers receiver. As a running back, he was their best receiving threat by almost 300 yards. And to top it off, he was 3rd in the league in touchdowns with 17 touchdowns this year. Like, the guy, when he is healthy, is just a force, an offensive force. 2 years ago, Offensive Player of the Year made sense. But if the 49ers had won the NFC East, Christian McCaffrey, without a doubt in my mind, would have been my MVP. And that's coming from a Patriots fan. As much as I love Drake May and everything that he's done for this team, hands down, Christian McCaffrey would have deserved it. Now, the 49ers did not win, and it is almost directly Christian McCaffrey's fault. Yes, it was a bad throw, but he did bobble it. They did lose that game. So that is over. So it is a 2-horse race. You have Matthew Stafford, you've got Drake May. And I think the logic is pretty much identical to what it was last year, where you had Lamar Jackson and you had Josh Allen. Look at the roster. Tell me which team, if you take off the quarterback, is the better team. And if you have an answer for that, and then you add the quarterback in, which team is better? That's what an MVP is. Most valuable player is a person who you can add to a roster and elevate it to a degree of it being way past what it's supposed to achieve. The Patriots roster is not as impressive as the Rams offense, like, at least on the offensive side of the ball. You have a 30-plus-year-old Stephon Diggs coming off of an injury. You have no idea what his play level is going to be. You had one of the worst offensive lines in the league last year. And yeah, they revamped it, so it's a decent amount better. Still, Drake May gets sacked 40 times. Then you have our rookie running back in Travion Henderson, who is very promising, who I'm very high on. The Patriots are still like one of the worser rushing offenses in this league. Now, I don't think that is true throughout the season. I think after the first 8 weeks, they did figure out more of how to use the 1-2 punch instead of just running at Ramondre Stevenson all the time. And I also learned to appreciate Ramondre Stevenson for what he brings to the table. But on the offensive side of the ball, you can't deny that the Rams have the better offensive line, that they have the better weapons in Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, that the running back. I'm not a huge Kyren Williams guy, but, he's good. Just outside of Matthew Stafford, there's so much talent on the offensive side of the ball for the Rams. I don't know that I buy the argument that he is more valuable just because who won more games. Look at the two defenses. The Rams defense is good. It's really good. The Patriots defense also good. I think defensively, they're not that far off from one another. I think that there are people out there who would take the Rams defense over the Patriots defense. The Patriots defense is like top 7 in everything, except when it comes to the red zone where they're dead last. But the Rams pass rush with Jared Verse, I think is pretty solid. I think overall, like, the Rams defense is not bad by any means. I think both teams have a top 10 defense. And then you look at the offense and yeah, the Rams have a better offense. But I think they just have better pieces all throughout. So in my mind, if you're actually talking about the definition of the word most valuable player, I think that's Drake May. I think you don't look at the Patriots offense and think I could take him out and anyone would have success in there and it would be like star-studded. This is not the 49ers with Brock Purdy. This is not like a plug-and-play anyone and they'll do well. The system, yes, it has functioned extremely well, but I think that Drake May is throwing at an unbelievable, like, to lead the league in yards per attempt and have the highest accuracy. You realize how well you have to be throwing, right? Like, he is throwing down the field on target all the time. He's throwing to Kayshon Boutte as the number 2, and Mac Hollins and Bob Douglas. And like, I don't know. It is amazing that we took the same wide receiver core from last year, added an injured 32-year-old Stephon Diggs, and it's flying colors. Like, he threw for like 4,400 yards. It's amazing. It's quite spectacular. I'm not trying to discount the Patriots in any way, but it is just like, it came out of nowhere. Who would have expected this? And the Rams, on the other hand, if you're talking about who had the better season, I'm not going to argue that. I think that Matthew Stafford had the more impressive season. 46 touchdowns. That is crazy good. He had more yards. And part of Puka's success comes from the fact that Stafford can feed him the ball in that way. Yes, Puka makes spectacular catches, but Stafford also puts it in the right place at the right time. So it's not like one-sided. It's not like the offense makes Stafford. Stafford also makes the offense. So it's a two-way street. Ultimately, I don't really care. At the end of the day, the MVP, I think, is a conjecture award. The main reason the MVP exists is for the discourse and for GOAT conversations. I feel like it is to push stories and arguments and debates, and I think it's fun to discuss who is going to win the MVP. But at the end of the day, the players really only care about one thing, and it's winning. I think the players in their hearts just want to win games and win the Super Bowl. So I think if you ask Matthew Stafford, you ask Drake May, do they care about winning the MVP or winning the Super Bowl, they're going to answer the same way. And yeah, I personally, while I think it would be cool if Drake May wins the MVP, and why I would give him the vote, I would not be upset at all if Matthew Stafford wins it. I think he 1000% deserves it. He's not my vote, but I would not be upset in the slightest. I would be very happy for Matthew Stafford. We're ready to win at this age. I think compared to where we saw Matthew Stafford in preseason with the back brace, the fact that he's not practicing, all of these question marks for the Rams, for him to go out and ball out and have the best season of his career in his 40s, that's an argument. That is for sure an argument. I think that Brady, you could have maybe given him an MVP in that year where we gave Rodgers the second in the back-to-back. Same can be said for Stafford this year. Like, we might look back at it and think that it's a snub if he doesn't win it. And even if he's not my vote, I think he's fully deserving of it. But most fans would agree. No one cares about the MVP like they care about the Super Bowl. If your team has the ability to compete for a Super Bowl, you are far, far less concerned with who wins the MVP. Now let's say your team gets eliminated. I think the MVP is a nice consolation prize. Or let's say you manage to get the perfect storm and you somehow get your quarterback to win the MVP and you win the Super Bowl. That's the cherry on top. But outside of Mahomes, very unheard of. And I am a superstitious guy. I usually don't want a team that I'm rooting for to have a MVP winner because it bodes poorly for the Super Bowl chances. I do believe in that. I saw it with Brady, and if the Patriots are truly in a position to go to the Super Bowl, I don't care about the MVP at all. But now that that's all settled, let's take a look at another aspect of this season that we can take a peek back at. So prior to the start of the NFL season, we obviously have fantasy football. In fantasy football, you're going to have the mock drafts, you're going to have all of these ADPs and predictions about who's going to be a boom or bust player in the upcoming fantasy year. And I did a video in which I laid out 2 hours worth of research about wide receiver stats, quarterback stats, running back stats, all the nitty gritty, try and figure out who are the best draft day steals. And in that video, there were a collection of guys, about like 10 to 15 guys, who I really felt stood out to me on the stat sheet. So now I thought it would be fun to take a look back at who those names were and see how they finished. So let's rewind the clock and take it back all the way to pre-NFC football draft and see in the quarterback department who were my 3 guys. There were 3 guys on my draft board who I was really targeting this year. And those 3 quarterbacks would be Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Justin Fields. And at the time, Justin Fields was being taken at the quarterback 13. Caleb Williams not too far behind at quarterback 15. And lastly, we had Drake May at quarterback 16. So, all in that very low 10, 11, 12 round area if you're drafting a 10 team, 12 team. Kind of in that range. Of these 3 guys, we had 2 that hit and 1 who absolutely did not hit. Justin Fields came in at the quarterback 13, but finished as a quarterback 27. And that's because he stopped starting games after week 9. He had a good run. Well, I mean, he had an okay run. I would say week 1, if you had him and you played him, you were feeling hopped up about him. And I know that because I had him and I played him in my other league. That was with a couple friends. I started with Justin Fields. I forget who I transferred to, and then eventually I finished the year with Jacoby Brissett. So it was kind of an ugly year of quarterback just from a player perspective. I did not have like a real quarterback, though Jacoby Brissett held it down and Justin Fields did hold it down from time to time. Definitely, if you drafted Justin Fields as your QB1, you were kind of not in a good place. And that's really only the case in one of my leagues, so that's okay. You live and you learn. Caleb Williams, I had him as my QB1 in one league as well. He was drafted as a QB 15 and finished as a quarterback 6. Now, I don't think he was the most dazzling of performers, but he was very solid and consistent. He was giving you like a pretty consistent 15, 16, 17, 18. Not your high flying like 20s or 25s. Maybe he had a big game here and there, but for the most part, he was just putting in his time, getting you around what he was expected, and moving your team along. And for him to go from QB 15 to QB 6 is a pretty significant jump. He did do quite a bit better than projected. So I think this qualifies as a hit. But by far and away the best of the three quarterbacks, the one that I ended up in the league that mattered most, which was the subscriber league, was Drake May. And now Drake May of the three quarterbacks was rated the worst, average of quarterback 16 off the board, and he finished as the QB2 in fantasy this year, I think falling just behind Josh Allen. And so yeah, if you landed Drake May, you had a terrific season. I mean, the guy, there's a reason why he's in this MVP conversation. He was playing lights out. He can do it with his legs, he can do it with his arm. All in all, yes, there were some bad weeks where the Patriots were running up the score and they didn't really need to throw. They instead ran the ball. And yeah, in those weeks, he did underperform a little bit. I remember an 11-point performance here, maybe a 9-point performance here. But in the fantasy playoffs, Drake May was undeniably a huge asset. Then we get to the running backs. For the running backs, there were mainly 4 guys that I recall really hammering home as home run dudes. Bucky Irving, DeAndre Swift, Travion Henderson, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Now, Bucky Irving, at the time of the draft, was the 8th running back being taken off the board, the RB8 consensus. He ends up finishing as the RB35, and that's not to any fault of his own. He just got hurt. And that's the problem with fantasy football, is as much time and research as you put into it, you can never predict an injury, unless it's an injury-prone player. But Bucky Irving was not that. I still think he had all the tools to be an elite fantasy pickup. And I unfortunately did not end up with him in any of my leagues, so I was really bummed about it on draft day. I guess looking in hindsight, it ended up working to my benefit because, bro was hurt. I did desperately try to trade for him in one of my leagues, though, and I did not end up successful. But it is what it is. Then we had DeAndre Swift, who on draft day was the running back 23, and by the end of the season, he ended up finishing as the RB15. So, right outside that RB1 category, as he was drafted as a low-tier RB2, ends up finishing as a high-tier RB2. I did have him in the subscriber league, and I did trade him away. And I think I'm fairly happy that all things considered, I'm happy I drafted him, and I'm happy I traded him. It all worked out exactly as it was meant to be. It was a good trade asset. Then we had Travion Henderson. And I can't say that this was a hit. I mean, the first one was definitely a bust. The second one, I wouldn't say it was a hit either, but I think it was still a solid value. Travion Henderson on draft day was the RB20, finished as the RB21. And honestly, the best way to have had Travion Henderson is if at his low point after like 8 horrible weeks, if you traded for the upside. I don't know how many people did, but if anyone did, that was probably the best experience you could have had with him, because through the first 7 weeks, it was so painful starting him every week for him to get like 7 carries and do nothing. He was in the complete doghouse and did not take over until Ramondre Stevenson got hurt, and then he was magnificent. He had some really huge games, and down the stretch also had some very solid performances. Second half of the season, Travion Henderson was what I was hoping to see for the entire year. But you had to really be patient in waiting 7 weeks for a pick to pan out. You have to have other guys who can step it up for you. So if you took Travion Henderson as like your RB, I mean, God forbid you took him as your RB1, but if you took him as your RB2, I don't know, it might have been rough. And then we have Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And Bill, he really let me down, even though he was RB32, and then he finishes as RB31. I thought that he was going to be like a low-end running back too. I thought that he had a much higher potential for success than he ended up having this year. Could not take over, was not impressive. There were quite a few rookies who I think let me down. Jadon Blue, Caleb Johnson, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. The idea that there are vets in the backfield that are going to get supplanted by rookies, I don't think it was that great of a strategy this year. Kind of ended up working out for RJ Harvey. But even with Travion Henderson, a lot of these guys, you really had to wait for any sliver of success. And with Jadon Blue and with, who's the other guy? Caleb Johnson, it just never panned out. So at least those guys you could move on quick. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I did start him a couple times for like 3 points, and I hated myself. But it is what it is. And for the wide receivers, there are 4 guys that at least I remember hyping up in the pre-draft room. These 4 guys were Drake London, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, and Deebo Samuel. Now I don't actually remember if I only drafted Deebo or if stuff spoke to me, because I remember being hyped about Deebo, but I think that might have just been conjecture from camp rather than actual stats. So I don't know if I can really claim Deebo or not, but Drake London, Devontae Adams, and Stephon Diggs for sure. I remember those 3 being really high on all of them. And in the final standings, we had Drake London, who was drafted as the wide receiver 9, finished as the wide receiver 26, and that's due to injury. I think in the weeks that he played, it was pretty solid, and he had some great weeks, but the injury did kind of ruin his season, ruin his potential for how great of a season he could have had, plus the injuries to the quarterback. Then you have Devontae Adams, who was being drafted as the wide receiver 16, but I remember all the stats pointing out that he was going to be a touchdown machine because of how much he was getting targeted in the red zone and how much Matthew Stafford likes to throw in the red zone. And yeah, that panned out exactly as expected. Devontae Adams, drafted as the wide receiver 16, finishes as the wide receiver 8 despite missing a little bit of time at the end there. Then you got Stephon Diggs. He was being drafted as the wide receiver 40 because no one had any faith in this Patriots offense. No one knew what is Stephon Diggs going to look like, who was going to be the top guy on this team. Drafted as the wide receiver 40. Diggs finishes as the wide receiver 14 on the year. Definitely a steal. If you managed to end up with him in any league, you probably were profiting. I got him in one league, in the one with my friends. I was actually pretty loaded at wide receiver in that league. It was a 3 wide receiver league, and I had Drake London, CeeDee Lamb, Tyrell McMillan, Stephon Diggs, and I had one more guy who was pretty good. I don't remember now. Oh, Roma Dunze. Yeah, I think I had those 5, so I was balling. Did not win. I got 3rd place in that league. Anywho. And then finally, there was Deebo Samuel, who I did draft in this league. And on draft day, he was going as the wide receiver 37. He ended up finishing as the wide receiver 24. I did stop paying attention to his production after I traded him away. He was really good in the first 3-4 weeks. And then Gene Daniels got hurt, and David McLaurin was out. And he stopped being as good of an asset, so I got rid of him. But for a few weeks, he looked pretty nice. And finally, we have tight ends. And for tight ends, guys. There were really just 3 guys that I was targeting, or at least I thought were good value picks compared to where to their pre-draft analysis. First was Travis Kelce, second was Tyler Warren, and third was Tucker Kraft. For Kelce, I just thought that the regression was slightly being overplayed. Where he was being drafted did not correlate to where he finished in fantasy last year. So I just knew like him going behind some of the other guys didn't make sense. He was being taken as the tight end 5. He ended up finishing as the tight end 3. So I feel like that was pretty good. Tyler Warren, I don't know how he ended up finishing the year, but through the first like 10 weeks, he was looking like a stud. Pretty much was just targeting him because I figured first round draft capital on a tight end in the last 2 years with Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers, it's panned out well. Between Loveland and Warren, there's a lot less mouths to feed in that Colts offense. I think Tyler Warren is the guy. And yeah, he ended up tight end 9 on draft, like ADP, and then tight end 7 is how he finished. So he did beat that mark as well. And the one where I wish injuries had not wiped out the season so we could actually talk about it is Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft I took as my tight end 1 in the subscriber league. And I want to say up until the point that he got hurt, he was like tight end 2 or tight end 3. He had some monster games for the Packers. I think the Packers did lose a good amount of juice on offense once he went down. Like losing Reed was not that impactful, but losing Kraft was horrible for the Packers offense. Though they still had some good games after it. And Tucker Kraft, I mean, he was a draft day steal for me, and then he went down. But luckily I was able to get a different tight end, so it all worked out. But yeah, being able to take him in like around 12 or something like that, and then having him be a week in, week out tight end option, it was nice. I remember his main thing was the broken tackles. He just had a crazy amount of broken tackles compared to all the other tight ends in the league. He just knows how to get open. And I think his yards per catch were also really high. Or maybe it was like yards after catch. Anyway, so all in all, some hits, some misses. You know, research, it can lead you to good things. It can lead you to fool's gold. It's not that every single pick panned out correctly. Fantasy football is a lot of luck and a lot of risk. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In my league this year, in the RenTen Rumble subscriber league, it looks like the draft research, it ended up panning out in my favor. I would say I kind of had a 2007 Giants postseason run when it came to this league, where I just barely scraped into the fantasy playoffs at a 7-7 record. Really could have missed the playoffs entirely. And then I somehow just won. Like the team played exactly as well as it needed to play in the postseason. Hit after hit after hit. Made it to the fantasy championship. Got matched up against the 2 seed in Ashton Powers after taking down the 1 seed in the semifinals. And I was projected 149.3 points to Ashton Powers' 141.2. In the semifinals, I scored 200, and in the finals, I scored 185. The boys showed out. Ashton Powers ends up with 121.58, and I win unexpectedly. Yeah, I mean, that was the year. That was probably the craziest fantasy football season that I have played. I've never been so, like, fantasy. I always tell myself, if I'm doing poorly, you just gotta make the playoffs. Like, once you make the playoffs, you got a shot. I don't think I ever actually believe it, though, just because it's like, it's cope. It's like, oh yeah, of course you can go on a run if you make the postseason. But that's exactly what happened this year. And I think a large part of that just has to do with the trades. You have a bad roster, you do have the ability to retool it, pick up guys that you have belief in, and then try and use those guys to go on a run. It just so happened that the people that I picked up, they did end up turning up towards the second half of the year, trading for Chase Brown, trading for George Kittle. They proved to be very valuable people down the stretch. My final roster heading into week 18 or week 17, I had Drake May at quarterback, Devon Achane and Chase Brown as my two running backs, Puka Nacua as my wide receiver 1, Terry McLaurin as my wide receiver 2, though Wan'Dale Robinson also could be considered my wide receiver 2. For tight end, because Kittle was out, I played Juwan Johnson, but I also had Dallas Goedert on the bench. And then in flex, I had Omarion Hampton, who I had from the start of the year. And in my second flex position, I had Ramondre Stevenson, who had a monster game in the championship to lift me up. And that was a plug and play. Someone else had Ramondre. I believe it was unsportsmanlike conductors who dropped him for someone else. And heading into week 17, I knew we were playing the Jets, the Patriots, and I thought that Travion Henderson would be out. So I was like, yeah, I'll pick up Ramondre Stevenson. I feel like he'll do something. And then he had like 3 touchdowns, so complete luck. And then Saints defense, Jason Myers. And on my bench, I had Emeka Egbuka, Bo Nix, Wan'Dale Robinson, George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, Dylan Sampson, and Luther Burden III. I'll be honest, I had a lot of points on my bench, and a lot of those points were just me playing defense in the last week. I saw Ashton Bowers' team. He had DK Metcalf and he had Devontae Adams. So really, I don't think it was a fair fight. I think his team at full strength, it would have been a matchup for the ages, because if Devontae Adams was out there and playing, he could drop 25 any given week. And DK, yeah, I don't like DK as much, but he was forced to start Devontae Smith, AJ Barner, and Kamire DK in the final week. And I did see heading into that final week that DK was suspended and Devontae Adams was out. So I was playing defense. That's why I picked up Luther Burden. That's why I picked up Dylan Sampson. I was like, let me just try and mitigate his best possible flex option here. I think that DK Metcalf being suspended did end up being good, just because Stephon Diggs may not have been played in that case. So Diggs getting the start over DK, that was a good one. But had he had Devontae Adams instead of Devontae Smith, would have been a lot better, I think. But ultimately, yeah, the running backs just didn't show up as much. Ashton Bowers' final team was Dak Prescott, Ashton Genty, James Cook, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Smith, AJ Barner, Stephon Diggs, Kamire DK, Lions defense, Harrison Mavis, Devontae Adams, Isaiah Pacheco, Nick Chubb, Brian Robinson Jr., Matthew Golden, JJ McCarthy, and Vikings defense. So, it was a great team. Definitely down the stretch did very well. At one point, Ashton Bowers had JJ McCarthy on his bench. Or no, he still had JJ McCarthy. I guess my mind just glossed over it. So yeah, I did think for a little bit that it'd be really funny if JJ McCarthy won the championship, but he was hurt. If 9 played, I probably don't win this game. But heck of a ride. Very, very fun here in fantasy. And yeah, it's like fantasy is 25% the draft, 25% the waiver wire, 25% the trade deadline, and 25% just luck. I guess throw in 10% consistency to get your lineups correct and all that, but it really is just, you have no idea what can happen. In the other league I was in, this girl drafted using last year's info. Like, she took Christian Watson in round 4. She took Zamir White in round 7. She drafted Aaron Rodgers really high for where he should have been drafted. And the whole time I was thinking, like, this is mean. Like, someone should tell her. I'm not gonna tell her, but, like, this is not okay. This is gonna be really sad for her. She won the league. She won first place. She was the best record in the league, and then she won in the playoffs. And her team, I don't even think it was that good. Like, that's not even me being bitter. It's just like, I think our genuine RB2 was Kenneth Gainwell. It was bizarre. She just is better. She is better at fantasy football than I am. She was better than all of us. And I think she said, like, she doesn't watch football at all. So, I guess the draft made sense, but, like, stuff like that is very like, you spend all this time doing research week in and week out and prior to the draft, and you can quite literally get someone in a paid league who just stumbles in, drafts with the wrong year's info, does their upkeep, and wins the whole thing. And that's life. I mean, fantasy football is awesome. I do think it's quite addictive. And just shout out to all the guys that participated this year. Shine Bright Like a Kyron Do, John Sportsball, Bucks Deluxe, Desperate Playoff Push, I'm Sorry Smith Jackson, Ashton Mowers, You Are Not My Homie, Eaton Dubs, and Sportsman Like Conductors. Heck of a year. Looking forward to running it back next year. And yeah, just it was a lot of fun. And that brings us to the next part of this video. We're almost there, guys. Just a few more parts. Man, do I like to talk, I guess. There's so much left, too. Okay, the next thing that I guess I made a preseason prediction of was for sports betting, for Prizepicks. Rather than doing weekly bets or playoff bets, I decided to take whatever little money I had left in my account and just throw it all at the wall. Let's throw it in some big old parlays and see what sticks. So I think I had a collection of maybe 20 or so picks that I liked. I remember going through the season-long NFL category and just picking my favorite out of every single category that existed. And when it came down to it, I didn't use all of them. I just used a majority to make some slips, and I did organize it based on what I thought was most to least likely to hit. And this is how it ended up panning out. So, my largest slip was $8.75. It was a 6-pick flex play to win, I don't remember, $200-something. But here's what I had. Ramondre Stevenson under 650.5 rushing yards. He finished with 603. Drake London over 1,125.5 receiving yards. He finished with 919. Caleb Williams over 22.5 passing touchdowns. He got 27. Tua Tagovailoa under 0.5 rushing touchdowns. I love that pick. He had 0. Dak Prescott over 4.5 games with 300 plus passing yards. He finished with 6. And finally, Jahmyr Gibbs over 300-yard rushing games. And he finished with exactly 3. So I had 4 hits, I had 1 miss, and I had 1 push. Push meaning, he needed more than 3, he got exactly 3, so it basically gets avoided. And then I went 4 of 5. And if Drake London did not get hurt, I think that he would have hit this. So, in my eyes, this was my most confident slip. That's why I put the most money on it. These were the 6 that I liked the most. Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, I don't really have anything for that one. I thought that he could do it for 4 games. He ended up only doing it for 3. But the London one, I do think if he was healthy, he totally could have got that, because I feel like he missed at least 3 games in the season. $125, and I end up winning $17.50 on that slip. Then I had my $5 slip. This one was a 6-pick flex play as well. $5 to pay $125 if I win. So I had a free pick from Prizepicks. Then I had Justin Fields over 20.5 passing plus rushing touchdowns. He played half a season, essentially, and he got 11. If they played him the whole year, maybe. But this, I will take ownership. This was bad. I didn't think Justin Fields' tenure with the Jets would be so bad that they would bench him in Week 9. I thought that he would make it through a full season at least. Yeah, my bad. Then we had Christian McCaffrey. I took over 11.5 rushing plus receiving touchdowns. He had 17. And Nico Collins. I had Nico Collins over 6.5 receiving touchdowns. He finished with 6. Like, that's a hook. That's a hook if I've ever seen one. I thought through the last 3 weeks he was totally hitting this. And he went scoreless in those last 3 weeks. So I was pretty pissed. But, like, he totally could have hit this. I think it was a solid read. Unlucky. Then, Bucky Irving. More than 1,375.5 rushing and receiving yards. This was steep. I remember seeing this line and thinking, like, that is kind of a lot. And then he ended up getting hurt, so there was no chance. He finished with 865. This one, I can't say for certain, even if he was healthy, that he would have hit. Though I do think if Justin Fields had played a full season, I think he could have hit the other one. I think after like week 1, he did have 4 though, so it was very imbalanced. And then finally, I had Demario Davis less than 0.5 interceptions, and that hit. So on this slip, I had 3 hits, and I had 3 misses. Well, one of those hits doesn't count. I had 2 hits, I had 2 misses, and I had 1 hook. And then finally, I had a $2 5-pick flex play, a slip, and these were the ones that I really didn't care about. Shedeur Sanders, starting over 2.5 regular season games, he started in 7. Sam Darnold, over 12.5 pass interceptions. Mind you, this was the highest on all of the options. Sam Darnold was the most of any quarterback. I took the over, and he got 14. Then, DK Metcalf, more than 200-yard receiving games. He had exactly 2. So that's a push. Then we had Lamar Jackson over 4,225.5 passing plus rushing yards. He finished with 2,898, but he also missed like 4 or 5 weeks or something like that. He missed a decent amount of time this year. So if he wasn't hurt, would have been a different story, but yeah. And then finally I had Malik Neighbors over 100.5 receptions. He had, I don't even know, I think he had like 18, and then he got hurt for the year, so that one was avoided. So I had 2 hits, 1 push, 1 chalk, and 1 void. So in total, across my 3 slips, my 17 picks, I had 8 hits. So 8 of them were correct. 2 of them pushed, meaning that I tied. So 10 of my 17 would not, they would either have won you money or they wouldn't have lost you money. I had 1 hook, being Nico Collins' touchdowns, where I barely missed. I had, in my heart, I had 1 true authentic miss, which was the Justin Fields 20.5 touchdowns. That was just a flat out miss. We have 3 that missed, but we can't say if they were bad or if they only missed because of injury. That would be Bucky Irving, Drake London, and Lamar Jackson. And then I had 1 voided due to injury, which was Malik Neighbors. So in total, I took $15.75, and I turned it into $17.50. Not bad. Not bad. I'm not complaining. to 17.50 over the course of a full NFL season. I got $1.75 profit. So, you tell me who's the real winner. That is roughly 10 cents per week. Passive income. You come here to learn financial advice. This is a joke. This is a joke, by the way. But if you had bet exactly how I bet with 10 times the money, that's $17.50. If you had bet what I had bet 1,000 times the money, $1,750. Just saying. But yeah, we'll take it. So that's how I did in Prizepicks. I guess I have like $20 in my account now, so maybe I'll bet on the playoffs, or maybe I'll just save it for next season, because I think that's more fun. Like, the playoffs, I just burn through it. The reads, I spend so much time on them, and then they don't hit, and then I feel bad. So I think betting over the course of a season is more fun, because I really don't care about it at all. And next up, let's do the weekly Pickems review. So as you know, through like weeks 1 through 10 pretty consistently, I was doing my weekly predictions, and then I had to go to India, and then I came back from India, but there was the holidays, and there was all this and all that, so it was really hard for me to stay consistent after week 10, but from weeks 1 through 10, you saw my predictions, you saw how I was doing. Now that the year is over, all 18 weeks have passed, we can actually take a look and see what my true win-loss was, see where I fell amongst all, weekly pick'em users on ESPN. So, the final numbers are in. I went this season 167 to 104. So that's 167 correct picks to 104 incorrect picks. Of all the people that participate in the weekly pick'ems, I ranked 2,111 211,735. 211,735. And in terms of percentile, I was in the 85.9 percentile. So 86th percentile if you round up. Meaning, you throw 100 people in a room, I'll be in the top 14 of ball knowers. Which is alright. It's not what I was hoping for. I was hoping for that 90th percentile, but I'll take it. And yeah, my best week was in weeks 7 and 11, where I went 12-3. And my worst week was actually week 18, where I went 7 and 9. So I mean, there were a lot of unpredictable outcomes in that last week. I thought it was the only week in which I went negative, but actually in week 3 or week 4, I went 7 and 8 as well. So there were 2 weeks in this season where I actually guessed more outcomes incorrectly than I did correctly, but very close to 500. And then, yeah, I went 12-3 twice. I think I did a little bit better last year in terms of like week to week. I had 1 week where I got like 14-2 or something like that, but still chasing that perfect week. And so, if we take this 167 to 104, this is authentically like every single game this year. I didn't miss a single pick. The reason why it shows up like this is because of the tie. There's that tie against the Cowboys and the Packers, and that doesn't show up in the win-loss. I don't think. That's why it's an odd. Yeah, I think that's why it's an odd number. An odd number. Anywho. So, let's see. Let's imagine I am not just a guy on YouTube. Let's say I'm a actual sports commentary analyst, like the ESPN and the CBS and the Yahoo Sports gurus. How did they do this year? How do I rank up against them? Well, Fantasy Nerds has a list of all the top analysts. They keep track of all of these analysts, how they're doing on their weekly pickems, because everyone is posting week to week, so they just keep track of like, okay, who is the most accurate of all the analysts this year. And this year, the most accurate analyst of all of them was FanDuel. It was not a real analyst. It was not a real person. It was FanDuel, the sports betting site, who went 182 correct picks, which was 15 more than me. And then in second place, we had Regan Holgate with 179 correct picks of WXIX TV. And in third place, we had DraftKings with 177 correct picks. So, I don't know about you, but I think that's a bad look for the NFL. For the number one analyst in all of sports to be, for two of the top three being fantasy betting sites. Not good at all. This is not going to help the NFL's scripted allegations, or their algorithms are just really good. But yeah, I don't know, that's kind of concerning. After that, we can take a dive through some more familiar names. We've got Pete Briscoe of CBS Sports. I think he had a good bounce back here. I feel like last year he didn't do very well. He ends up being fourth, just missing the top three at 176. We also have Jason Reed of ESPN at 176, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN at 172, and then we get John Breach and Ryan Wilson of CBS at 171 apiece. Then we get three ESPN analysts back to back, and Lindsay Theory, Mike Clay, and Matt Bowen, who go 171, 170, and 169. Then we get CBS Sports Dave Richard, CBS Sports Cody Benjamin, and CBS Sports Tyler Sullivan. And after all of those names, tied with Greg Kellig of the Sports Affiliation is where I would have placed. So, 15th best amongst the professional analysts. Now this list is a bit longer. It does go well past 20. I did finish above Eric Moody of ESPN and Seth Wickersham. But this is all relative. I mean, I guess compared to the actual pros, it feels pretty good. It feels pretty good to see that you can just pick out of a blank slate of games and do about as well as a CBS or ESPN analyst whose job is to do this. It's inspiring. But then there's also the context of, yeah, I did this every single week, and there's still 211,000 people who did as well, if not better than me at this. So, obviously, there's a large margin for improvement. This is not a very impressive accomplishment, but I will take at least a little bit of pride in the consistency aspect and the fact that it's fun. I really don't do it to prove that I could do this at a high level. It's more just, it is a lot of fun to theorize and predict, and obviously it is nice when they go your way, but even when they don't go your way, that's almost better, because life is all about the unpredictability. If I could accurately pick every single game, then I guess the NFL wouldn't be very fun to watch, would it? So I enjoy that. I think obviously I'll want to do better, just because the competitive nature. I really do want to get into the 90s. I feel like last year I was in the 92nd percentile, so I got a bit worse this year. But that's okay. But yeah, to toot my own horn, just because I can, so why not? This year, I was only 2 picks below. Who was it? Matt Bowen. Matt Bowen finished with 169 correct picks, whereas I finished with 167. But I'll have you know that Matt Bowen was the #1 most accurate analyst in 2020, 2021, and 2024. So last year. So last year's smartest cookie versus RenTen ASMR. It's a 1-point difference. And then I was only 1 point less than Dave Richard. Oh, sorry, that was 2-point difference. Never mind. It was only a 1-point difference between me and Dave Richard, who was the most accurate analyst in 2015 and 2016. So the guy who was the best analyst in football a decade ago, I'm only one off of him. But no, props to the 211,000 people who could also easily do this in their sleep. Because this is an ASMR channel. But yeah, if anyone did Pickems, let me know how you guys did. I feel like this is an easy score to beat. I'm sure some of you guys probably did outdo me. I'd love to hear how your win-loss was. And finally, last but not least, we have the end of the video, the last segment, my final prediction, which also comes from that painting the NFL playoff picture video, but it's the holy grail. It's the actual purpose of the video, which is to predict which teams are going to the playoffs and which teams are not. So all the way back in early September when I posted that video, I had 7 teams from the AFC, I had 7 teams from the NFC, and here's how it went. From the AFC, how's this going to display? From the AFC, in first place, I thought the team to be first in the AFC would be the Baltimore Ravens, followed by the Buffalo Bills, the Denver Broncos, the Houston Texans, and then in the wild card, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and just barely creeping into the playoffs, the Cincinnati Bengals. And I had the Jacksonville Jaguars as my honorable mentions. And the NFC, as the top seed in the NFC, I had the Washington Commanders, followed by the Detroit Lions, followed by the 49ers, then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, then the LA Rams, then the Green Bay Packers, and finally I had the Philadelphia Eagles. So, all in all, from both conferences, I went 4 of 7, which is, it's not terrible, it's not great. The 2 things that I actually got are the 3 things that I got accurate, which I would say I'm happy with, is in the AFC, the Broncos winning the AFC West. That was one that I'll say I thought it was a more bold prediction. At least at the time, it felt more bold, and I'm happy that I made it. Number 2, this is not a bold prediction. I think it just happened to finish very nicely. I accurately predicted that the Rams would finish as the 5th seed in the NFC. Complete luck, but I'll take. And third, the one that I am also proud of, though now everyone will say it was very obvious, but at the time I felt like I got a lot of flack for it, was the Vikings missing the playoffs in the NFC. I feel like that one I did ruffle some feathers, saying that the Vikings would finish in 4th place in the NFC North and that they would miss the playoffs. I remember getting comments of people being like, the quarterback, if they can just get a decent quarterback replacement, the Vikings could go to the Super Bowl, or they could go to the championship game. And yeah, that's probably true, but they don't have a quarterback. They don't have one. JJ McCarthy is not it. None of those guys on that roster could elevate them like that, so I'm happy I made that prediction, and I'm happy it panned out to my favor. Yeah, let's go over the actual NFL playoff picture for the AFC and the NFC. In first place of the AFC with the bye week is the Denver Broncos. Then in second place, we got the New England Patriots. Third place, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. And fourth place, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. Those are our 4 AFC division winners. In the wild card, we got the 5th place Houston Texans, the 6th place Buffalo Bills, and the 7th place Los Angeles Chargers. So that results in the Broncos getting the bye and us having these wildcard matchups of the Houston Texans versus Steelers, the Buffalo Bills versus the Jags, and the Chargers versus the Patriots. Now, in the NFC, clinching the bye week, in first place we had the Seattle Seahawks. Then we got the second place Chicago Bears, the third place Philadelphia Eagles, and the fourth place Carolina Panthers, being our division winners for this year. And then in our wildcard teams, we have the 5th place Rams, the 6th place 49ers, and the 7th place Green Bay Packers. So that is our playoff matchups. So my expectations of the playoffs versus the reality of the playoffs. And if you want to find out who I think is winning each of these wildcard matchups in Super Wildcard Weekend, then you have to tune into the next video because I am now done. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, for letting me moan on and on and on about my predictions and how good and how bad they were. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you. And I think one thing that I am going to make as a personal, what do they call it? My New Year's resolution for this year is to be more consistent. And I'm talking consistent as a creator in terms of quality, but also consistent in terms of frequency of videos. I think over the last 2 years, a trend that I've noticed with my own production is just I tend to have periods where I'm very active and I'm very in it. 3 videos a week on the dot, trying to release, get all my thoughts out. And then I'll vanish for like a few months at a time, either because something came up, I had finals, I had to travel, general burnout, something or another will keep me away from the camera for extended periods of time. And I think it's bad for momentum, it's bad for consistency, and I enjoy making these videos, but I do want to see growth in myself as a content producer, and for the channel. And I feel like I'm doing a bad job of that at the moment, so I want to put out a more quality product that I feel like is more respectable, and I want to be more consistent. So my goal through 2026 is to put out at least a video a week for every week in the year. We're talking from January 1st through January 7th being the first week between now and the very last week in December. I want to put out at least 52 videos, so one video a week. And I think that's it. That's my one goal with this channel. Make it a 52-week streak, try and get through the whole year and see what happens. I think last year I got really lazy in the off season and I came back pretty late in the game. And I don't want to do that again. I want to explore what other video ideas are out there. I want to obviously talk about football, but also talk about other things. There are a couple other things that I have in mind that I really would like to get to, but the fast-paced nature of football, I'm not getting to them anytime soon. So come March, maybe we'll see some different, more unique content on the channel. And some of it might hit, some of it might not at all. But I want to get better at the ASMR, and I want to be more consistent. And we'll see in 2026 where that leads us. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you listening, and I will see you next time.